So if the Chinese Communist Party succeeds in its ambitions, what would that mean for the United States?
I mean, you're essentially right. You become then a consumer culture, right? You become a culture where your economy is already hollowed out, your country's hollowed out. You're not able to find meaningful work in outside of these sort of digital job space, and so the backbone of the country is just kind of broken. But you can make money online, you can continue to purchase your cheap imported CCP goods, and then click over to the next what's coming up next on Netflix, rather than having these holistic, vibrant communities that we've seen in the past. And a way to, and you're seeing this more and more with escapism and escapist technology like Metaverse, like Oculus, the way these things are kicking off. It's, I don't just want to say it's going to be exactly like, the opening scene of Ready Player One, where the guy's living in a trailer park, but, he puts on his goggles and then he's immersed in this wide-eyed, futuristic, I think he's like in space as well. He uses spaceships and stuff. But you're really seeing that some of that sci-fi stuff come home to roost, because the vibrant type of society seems to be leaving the United States behind. And I think people get a general sense that American society is, I don't know if it's completely declined, but it's become stagnant, right? It's become quite stagnant. Hollywood can't find an original thought anywhere. Our businesses, seem to be sort of just kind of recirculating the same type of stuff, and it's become much more insular. Whereas in China, you see vibrancy, you see they're constantly rebuilding things. They're building new bridges, they're building new subways, airports, their infrastructure is going through the roof. People are making a lot of money. People are getting rich. This is obviously something that the party is trying to cramp down upon. It's almost like Shanghai right now is like New York in the 1980s, right? Everybody's just trying to get rich. It's all about money. And the party, of course, is trying to clamp down on that a little bit, clamp down on those desires. Talk about communism, right? By the way, it's state capitalism. I remember this when I lived in Shanghai, and I did my stint at the American Chamber of Commerce, and I also worked for an international firm there. We would see delegations, congressional delegations, senators, governors, or just business groups that would come in, and they were totally enamored with the CCP system. They said, well, you can just smash down houses and kick people out of the way so you can build your maglev. You can, get rid of whole neighborhoods if you want to build a Shanghai Disneyland, human rights, what are those? Completely checked out. So the power, right? The power behind it was so intoxicating to them that really it became an infatuation. And so you're seeing, we were told originally, I guess in the 80s, that the opening up of China would lead to the liberalization of China, the democratization of China, but it's actually been the opposite that's taken place, right? So with the West opening up to China, it's made the West more authoritarian. It's made the Western elites more willing to use these types of tools. And we've already got an ESG system on Wall Street, which is essentially a corporate social credit score. So it's really changed the tenor of how things work, because essentially they've seen the progress of the CCP system, and they say, you know what, I like that. I want that for myself.
Well, I think something interesting you mentioned is just the general kind of cultural malaise that has, beset the United States as a real factor in why the Chinese Communist Party could rise. We talk a lot on the show about what the U.S. government could do to counter the Chinese Communist Party, but with this kind of cultural aspect of it, what can individual Americans do to kind of turn back the tide?
Well, so I think that, I've seen some of those buy Made in American movements. And of course, I always support that. I always say that, we always buy American cars. That's just something my family's always done. But at the same time, it really needs to be a political response at this point, because there are so many people that are making so much money off of this economic relationship and off of the ability of allowing the CCP to rise. We've completely underwritten it in the West and certainly in the United States. So you've got to go and find political leaders out there that have the same type of beliefs and say, enough is enough. We don't want to live in this hollowed out country anymore without a manufacturing backbone, without industry. We want that back. We realize that, we have to go back to a situation where, because these multinationals, sure, they're headquartered in America, but they don't look at America as their country. They look at America as, another market, right? Just another market to sell into. So, Hollywood is a great indicator of this, right? Where, a movie comes out, but they say, well, we have to make it play in every demographic, in every market. So we've got to have something here for the Americans, something here for Asia, et cetera. Though it is interesting that last year CCP blocked, I think, all four Marvel movies going into China. So that just makes me laugh. And that's how you're looked at. So you've got to put some type of regulations in place where you turn the dial back away from this globalized economy, and bring it back to a place where no, each country is a home. It's a home of the people who live there. You have been given a great right by that country to operate there, to have your tax base taken care of, to be able to run your businesses. But at the same time, you can't be doing so to the detriment of the people that are also living in that country. So whether that takes the form of tariffs or other types of economic leverage, I'm all for it. I'm totally not a free trader in terms of this.
Well, it sounds to me like it's not just American people should reach out to the current politicians and try and demand change, but maybe that instead of jumping on board the metaverse, people get involved in politics themselves. People get involved in business, and they educate themselves and actually try to get into the institutions and make change.
I mean, exactly right. We saw the long march in China. We've seen the Marcuse's long march through the institutions here in the United States. It's perfectly fine for the American people to do that, right? This experiment in a globalized economy has brought, clearly has brought many innovations. The ability for, we're doing this podcast right now over the internet, right? The technology revolution has been incredible. The technology revolution, I think we're not even done it, by the way. It will be as big a turning point in human history as going from medieval times to modern times was. That's how big the technological revolution will be when it's done. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't see the same types of problems that occurred in going through that switch. So, which of course, Industrial Revolution happens, and then immediately after that, what do we see is massive warfare across the continent of Europe. The Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II, mechanized warfare. We haven't even seen digitized warfare. And you talk about the metaverse. What happens when, Elon Musk's Neuralink is used by the CCP for digital cyber operations, or to go after our ships at sea. We just lost an F-35 in the South China Sea. We're trying to recover that before China can. Well, what happens when they're able to use these types of technology to go after our sailors, to go after our ships, to go after our troops? Not a good situation. And we haven't even talked about space yet, but certainly space, there is going to be a new space race, right? The new space race is going to be as important as think of being a sea power, right? So being a sea power is what led first Denmark to become such an international force, Spain, and then, of course, Great Britain, and the UK being the largest empire in the world. You are going to see that exact same dynamic take place in space. So whoever is able to become a space power first and fastest is going to essentially win the next century. And right now, I don't think it looks like it's the United States.
Well, as I've always said, space is the final frontier. I came up with that.
I was trying not to say that. I was like trying to get through all my thing with don't say space is the final frontier. Don't say it. And there you go.
Love is the final frontier.
So you want love warfare?
Hasn't it always been war?
Love warfare, yes. Love bombing.